Hello, welcome. So today we are doing SA 402, that is audit considerations relating to an entity using a service organization. If you This lecture will be pure 100% in English. If you need these notes, you can get these free on our Telegram channel. Link is in description. And if you need the whole note, you can purchase them from the website. Okay, so let's start. What does SA 402 talk about? SA 402 basically has two entities. One is your user entity, second is your service organization. User entity, service organization, user entity, and service organization. Okay. Now the user entity is whose books of accounts you are auditing, and the service organization is the entity that provides services to the user organization. Okay, now how does the service entity affect us? Okay, so if any service provided by the service organization affects our financial reporting process or any controls relating to it, in such a case it becomes necessary for the user auditor. Who is the user auditor? User auditor is the auditor of the user entity, and the auditor of the service organization is called the service auditor. So it becomes necessary for the user auditor to check. He will have to perform audit procedures to check that any services that is provided by the service organization to the user auditor, if they affect our financial reporting process. Great. So with that, let's start with this essay. Okay. Now let's see the definition. Your user auditor is an auditor who audits and reports on the financial statements of a user entity. Okay. So user entity, this is whose books of accounts are being audited. Who is a user entity? I'll just increase the pen thickness. Okay. So user entity is the entity that uses service organization and whose financial statements are being audited. Great. Now there are two types of reports, type 1 report and type 2 report. Two types of report. This is issued by the auditor of the service organization, which is also called as the service auditor. Your type 1 report is a report. Okay, so what is the difference between both of them? Let's see. So it is a report on description, design. Okay, over here there is operating effectiveness extra. What else? This type 1 report is for a specified date, whereas type 2 report is for a specified period. Okay, so this is your, but both of them, remember, both of these are your reports of the service organization only. Great. So now what are the auditor's objectives in this essay? What are the auditor's objectives? Your auditor's objective will be to obtain an understanding of nature and significance of the services provided by SO, that is your service organization, and their effect on the user's entity internal control relevant to audit, sufficiently to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. Ultimately, the user auditor, he has to identify the risk and assess material misstatement. Okay, so once he has done this, what will he do? He will design and perform audit procedures responsive to those risks, all the risks that he identified over here. He will design audit procedures to target those risks, to check if any of those risks have any effect on our financial statements. Great. Now what is next? Obtain understanding of services provided by SO include. That is, if you want to obtain an understanding, how will you obtain an understanding? And basically, what understanding do you have to obtain? So first is your nature of services provided by SO, that is your nature of service and the significance to the user entity. What are the nature of services that the service organization provides to the user entity, and what is its importance to the user entity? What is its significance? Next is your nature and materiality of transaction processed or financial reporting processes affected by FO, that is your nature and materiality. In the first point, what we did was nature and significance, nature and importance. Now we are doing nature and materiality of transactions processed by the service organization or any financial reporting processes that are affected by my SO. Okay. Now what is your third? It is your degree of interaction between my service organization activities and those of user entity. How much do my activities, how much do the activities of both the organization interact with each other? And your fourth point is nature of relationship between user entity and the service organization. What relationship do both of them share? Are they related parties by any chance? So in that sense, you will have to design your audit procedures appropriately. Okay, now what are the auditor's consideration? What are the auditor's consideration? That is, what will the auditor check? Auditor will do a DIM, that is, he will design, implement and maintain. That is your DIM. So he will evaluate the design, implementation and maintenance of relevant controls of whom you are the user auditor. So you will check of the user entity. that relate to the services provided by SO. You will check the design, implementation and maintenance of controls of the user entity that relate to the services provided by the service organization. What is the second point? If the user auditor is unable to obtain sufficient understanding from the user entity, if the user auditor is not able to understand from the user entity, then what will he do? First is he will obtain a type 1 or type 2 report if available, because this is the audit report of your service organization. It will help you understand better of how the service organization is functioning. Second is contact service organization through user entity. Either you can contact the service organization itself through the user entity, or you can visit the service organization. And third point is using another auditor to perform audit procedures. Who is your another auditor? This will be your service auditor, to perform procedures that will provide information about, this has to be about, okay, not above, about relevant controls at your service organization. Okay, so you will use the work of another auditor to provide information about the relevant controls at service organization. Okay, if the service organization uses a sub-service organization, okay, now till now we were already involved with two parties, now there are three parties. So if this is your user entity, okay, if a user entity is using already services of a service organization, now what if this service organization has outsourced this service to another third party? Your this third party will be called a sub-SO, that is your sub-service organization. This is the entity that is actually providing services to the user entity. Okay, so in such a case, if the SO uses a sub-service organization, and if the report of, if the service report, if the service auditor's report include details, include controls about the sub-service organization, okay, hear me clearly. If the service organization's audit report includes details and about the relevant controls of the sub SO also about the third party, then such a report is called your inclusive method. However, if the report does not include, if the report does not have any information about the sub-service organization, it will be called a carve-out method. Great, and coming to the last point, your nature, timing and extent of work to be performed by user auditor. Nature, timing and extent of work to be performed by the user auditor regarding the services provided by the sub-service organization will obviously depend on the nature and significance of those services to the user entity, that is how important and what is the nature of those services that the service organization provides to the user entity, and the relevance of those services to the audit. Okay, so I hope this essay is clear, and we will meet in the next class.